Hey everybody, it's Kneecap here, and in this video I will be going over the patch 9.0.5 patch notes that is set to come out next week. Some notes, I will be going through mostly everything, but I am going to skip over the class fixes because it's very long. The video would be 40 minutes long if I went over all the class fixes, so I'm going to go over the overview of all the major changes, and I will highlight Paladin changes specifically because that's what I main, and a lot of my videos on my channel are Paladin centered. So I will go through Paladin stuff. The first thing of note here is they were going to change the way the formula that works on Mythic Keystones. You might have seen videos about that. It's important to know that they already received the bad feedback about it and they are already reverting it. So if you haven't heard anything about a formula changing, just continue not to worry about it. If you have heard about it but don't know that they're reverting it, then here I am telling you, don't worry about it. They are reverting it back. So no big deal there. So we have some updates for adventure companions, Kyrian Covenant companions, the Phalnix, the tank, just general tank guy that you get, had his health increased. Necrolord's Night Fae got some substantial buffs to their mission table, and Venthyr also got a minor buff, kind of like the Kyrian. For characters, undead players' cloaks are now tattered, just like the characters are. Some things in classes here that I will go over real quick is some of the bigger abilities like Ashen Hollow. That's one everyone knows. Resonating Arrow, I think a lot of people know. Wild Spirits. These type of abilities will no longer be quite as graphics intensive. That way, people without high end computers don't get destroyed when people use them. It doesn't affect me, but I had computers that were not very good, and so I'm all for that. This is a really interesting one I want to highlight. Many abilities are now better at avoiding in-combat enemies that the player is not engaged with, such as Convoke Spirits, Starfall, Chain Harvest, Fell Bombardment, and Divine Toll. I am going to talk about Divine Toll. It's not a huge change for Divine Toll, but Convoke the Spirits, Starfall, the way that this could work would be very interesting, the way it's worded, because it could be almost a nerf to Starfall in some cases and a buff to Convoke if you're trying to single target with your Convoke. So that could be interesting. For Divine Toll, a lot of times you do want it to hit other things, but well, I guess it's not as big of a deal for Divine Toll. But I am interested to see how this works and if they have to revert it or do anything to change it after this is applied. Very interesting. Like I said, there's a ton of changes. Let's go over the Paladin changes really quick. Even though I mostly just do Rat, I'll just go over all the Paladin changes. Holy Shock now costs more mana, 16% up from 14. Protection, Ardent Defender's Heal now has a visual effect. Covenant abilities, Vanquisher's Hammer Necrolord now generates one holy power when used. That basically makes it usable. Still not the best, obviously, but it does make it a usable ability because before it was just crap. Conduits, the extra spells from Ringing Clarity, Kyrian now have a longer delay between hits. Additionally, Area of Effect Judgment. The rest of this is a little bit weird, but the main thing here is, that I got to point out for people is, and apparently the speed at which Ring and Clarity hits. So if you don't know what that is, if you do PvP and you get one shot by a rat, it's usually Divine Toll, and the judgments are hitting you at every 0.2 seconds. So let's say they hit you with 4, that's over 0.8 seconds, so less than a second you're getting hit by 4 judgments. They're upping that to, I believe I read, 0.7 seconds. So 4 judgments would take 2.8 seconds to hit you. So you could technically heal through that, especially with a big heal, or an instant cast heal even. So in your person takes a second to react, they can heal you through it. It'll no longer one shot you essentially, as long as it'll still kill you if you're not getting any healing or anything, of course, but it'll no longer one shot you. So that's the implications for PvP and why it's changed. There are some interesting implications for PvE because of the Magister's Judgment legendary, and since this casts Judgment, the internal cooldown on that is 0.5 seconds. So technically, every single Judgment can now have a chance to trigger that, which first of all, it greatly increases it gets triggered. Second of all, you could technically cast Divine Toll and immediately, let's say the first Judgment procs it. Now you cast a Templar's Verdict, and now your third Judgment perhaps could now give you another proc. So you could get multiple procs off of it essentially, which is really cool. And I expect that to actually play into it quite a bit. Virtuous Command no longer plays an attack animation when it triggers, and it fixed an issue where Templar's Verdict from Templar's Vindication to not deal damage based on the initial Templar's Verdict, which is a bit odd. Yeah, we're not going over all the. Thank goodness. There's a lot of changes. So if you were interested, I will post a link to it, anyways, in the thing. If you're interested in your classes changes and you haven't heard about them yet, I will post that link for you. There's a bunch of covenant changes. Again, these are the Venthyr. They're changing the way the court works a little bit. They're changing a few things to the Queen's Conservatory. They basically reworked how Fleshcraft works. I'm not going to go over it, even though some paladins do undoubtedly play Necrolord, no matter how few it is. So they reworked how Fleshcraft works. They changed how the Queen's Conservatory does some things, and then they changed how the Ember Court works a little bit. That's what you need to know for like the Covenant stuff. Here's some real interesting ones. The Dungeons and Raids, the Loyal Stoneborn, so that's the gargoyle that you take control with if you're Venthyr. It now lasts for 45 seconds, up from 30, so it lasts 50% longer. However, the damage they do is now reduced by 50% while charmed, of course, not before you charm it. But it lasts longer. So you get the duration of the defensive. It gives you might not know this, it gives you a defensive damage reduction. So that lasts the full time, and it has not been nerfed. So it's a buff to damage reduction, nerf to damage, at least initial damage, but it does last longer. So I think it's overall a buff, honestly, because damage reduction is very important, especially maybe you're fighting it with a Prideful. That helps your healer out to have that thing last the entire Prideful, perhaps. Sanguine Depths, they reworked the anima cages to last longer, and the buff to last longer as well. And they did move that one anima cage, if you know what I'm talking about, that is near a patrolling sentinel, so it's easier to access. Plaguefall, and they made Brood Assassins no longer trigger necrotic affix, and then in Sanguine Depths, General Cause Gauntlet, the Stonewall Gargants also no longer trigger the necrotic affix. Items and rewards, the community voted mount, the Wandering Ancient is now available, something I'm very excited about. The Valor Point system will now be available, and so basically gear you have right now before patch cannot be upgraded, but things you get now can now be upgraded. This system's mostly for alts, honestly, but if you have a main with an item that's stuck down, or you can just run, it's not going to help the item that you have now, but if you just run a Mythic Plus and get a whatever 2.0 whatever item, you can now upgrade it up to 220. Maybe it'll have better stats for you or whatever. The Great Vault raid loot requirements are changed to 369 from 3710. Just did a video about that. If you're interested in the Great Vault change and what I think about the Great Vault, check that video out. Potency Conduits now drop in Castle Nathria. This is a really big change, really important change. Once players reach 40 renown, their Covenant, the weekly quest to gather 1,000 anima will now award you with 1,500 gold. Once players have recruited the maximum amount of souls for their Covenant, your weekly quest to rescue souls from the mall will award you with 500 anima. So this is really cool. They're trying to find ways to give you more anima. Rhinestone sunglasses can now be used in transmog. That's cool. None of that stuff's really that important. Legendaries will go down to Paladin. Again, there's quite a few legendary changes. A lot of it's just the same thing, kind of buffing the ones that aren't used. And for this, we will just talk about the retribution for this. Anybody can use Vanguards or Dusk of Dawn. Vanguard's momentum increases holy damage done by 4%, was 3. For 10 seconds was 8, slight buff. Of Dusk and Dawn, buff duration increased to 12 seconds, was 8. And Blessing of Dust, damage reduction increased to 4%, was 3, slight buff. Retribution, final verdict damage increased to 15%. This is huge. Basically, if you're non-Venthyr, this is your best single target one. Magister's Judgment will still be up there, but there's no real reason to use the Mad Paragon legendary as Kyrian anymore, because that's most rep pallies are either Kyrian or Venthyr. Final Verdict is very strong now. Magister's Judgment now grants the proper amount of Crusade stacks, so I didn't even know this was an issue. But Magister's Judgment basically wasn't working with Crusade, So if Crusade ever becomes the top choice, Magister's Judgment, if you're using that legendary, I'm currently using it just because it's fun. And if Crusade becomes the flavor of the day, then it'll work with Crusade now. Player versus player. The Horde flag size in Warsong Gulch and Twin Peaks have been increased to match the size of the Alliance flag. Well, thanks. We finally did a little bit of class balancing there, I guess. A little bit too much, but whatever. Focus Assault and Brutal Assault now increase damage taken by 10% per stack and reduces healing received by 5% per stack in Warsong Gulch, Twin Peaks, and Eye of the Storm. So this is killing the flag carrier. Deepwing Gorge. Side capture point flags now spawn 14 seconds after the battleground has begun, and the central flag spawns 18 seconds after the battleground has begun. Was immediately at the start. Fix an issue that caused battle flags to not be usable in Wintergrasp or Asheron Battlegrounds. Bloodlust, Heroism, Time Warp, Primal Rage, and Drums of Heroism/Maelstrom are no longer usable during the battleground preparation phase. Asheron. Maximum player count per faction is 35, up from 30. Starting reinforcements are 175 was 150. They're trying to make Asheron playable to allow both factions to have easier access to the flowers. These tasty treats will now spawn alongside each other in the Dark Woods and the Root Den. Artifact Fragment cost to summon Kronos and Fangirl reduced in half. Horde Alliance Tower Mages are now with 30 instead of 50. And Horde Alliance Tower Mages have had their spells adjusted. Crestfall, the Alliance Tower Mage. Northern Winds now deals 15% of the target's maximum health and frost damage. Frostbolt now deals 8% of the target's maximum health and frost damage. Frostbolt Valley now deals 15% of maximum health and frost damage. And no longer casts Mass Polymorph. Horde Mage Tower. Jaren Emberfall. Fireball now deals 8% of the target's maximum health. Combustion Nova now deals 50% of the target's health. Ignite now deals 1% of the target's maximum health and fire damage. Living Bomb initial spell now deals 5% of the health and fire damage. Explosion now deals 50% of fire damage, 15% maximum health and fire damage. Living Bomb no longer causes a knockback when exploding. This is big. Magma Blast cast by Jaren's Summon Lava Fury now deals 5% of the target's health. So they tried to make the damage somewhat even, and of course, they got rid of the Living Bomb knocking off Alliance players when the Alliance thing does no such thing. One of the biggest bullcrap things in the world. I'm an Alliance player. I'm biased, yes. But I don't know how anyone could look at this and ever think that it was fair that one of them can knock you off the edge and the other can't. And you know what? You might say, well, you just got to be smart enough not to get knocked off the edge. Well, even if I'm smart enough not to get knocked off the edge, 10 of my teammates might get knocked off the edge anyways. And now I'm up there by myself. So this is a long time coming. Thank goodness. You can still come up and knock people off on your own, but no more NPCs doing it. Isle of Conquest. Glaive Thrower health has been increased by 40%. Alliance and Horde Commander health increased by 50%. Demolisher health increased by 25%. Catapult and health increased by 100%. And the amount of seed damage required to break down keep walls has been increased by 20%. They are essentially trying to take away the hanger being like the super thing to use. It's hard to do. It always ends up being the best one way or another. But they're trying to make it not be, the only thing to do by increasing health of other things, and we'll see how that works. Wintergrasp, Broken Temple, and Sunken Ring workshops are now controlled by the attacking team. That's very important. Wintergrasp Wall, Wintergrasp Fortress Gate health has been reduced by 20%. That's huge. Destroying Towers reduces match time by 8 minutes. It was 5. Which actually kind of helps you lose faster if you are losing. Siege Engine, Steam Rush ability deals 20 to 35% of the player's health, was 30 to 45, which was absolutely hilarious. Demolisher's Hurl Boulder ability deals 20 to 25%, down from 36%, so nerfing the damage of the Demolishers. Demolisher will now more consistently deal siege damage when striking fortress walls and towers. After 5 minutes, all players in Battleground who do not have a rank, including players who join late, will now be granted the rank of Corporal. So everyone, after 5 minutes, can build some sort of vehicles. We already went over the visual effects to some of the things there. The Maw. A new account-wide unlock has been added to Venari that reveals teleport nodes on all the long walkable chains in Torghast, so you can quickly cross the chains and no longer face your fear of heights. I don't have a fear of heights in that way. However, I did fall off these chains multiple times, so I'm very excited about this change. Reduce the health and amount of Anima Devours required for Stage 1 of the Winged Soul Eater's Hunt. That is actually really good. That one's really annoying in the hunt there. Torghast Tower of the Damned. They are basically doing some things with anima powers. There's no paladin changes here, so I'm not going to go over them, but they have done a lot of stuff for anima powers. Some interesting things, though. Overview. A brief description of each wing is now available before embarking into any given Torghast run. To better increase your odds of success, a recommended item level will now be displayed. And reduce the amount of enemies on multiple floors. Some of the floors had a ton of enemies, frankly. And then the last thing we'll go over real quick here is the WoW Companion app. They changed the expansion select button action to a tap and added a button to switch expansions in the menu. Clarified the region, the character on select row. Fixed an issue where news articles didn't show content when the phone's language did not match the article's language. And fixed an issue that duplicates missions and callings. And various updates to the adventures. So, just some general WoW Companion app stuff there. So, this is a pretty big patch for a 0.5. Obviously, there's no new content. It's just a lot of fixes, a lot of bug fixes. Some people say too late on a lot of them. But it's a pretty big patch. A lot of good changes, too, though. And it's important to remember the good changes that are coming in this as well. Some of the Battlegrounds ones that I was just reading are good. Just the change to the vault and then reverting back to the vault is good. I guess you shouldn't get credit for doing nothing, I guess, but keeping it the same. But listening, I guess, gives credit. But yeah, there's definitely some interesting things, and I tried to highlight those specifically in this video. So yeah, as always, I do ask you to please subscribe to the channel because it helps me out so much. And other than that, everybody, have a good one.